Italy has condemned Monday's attack in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. 3 people, including the Italian ambassador, were killed. Several rebel groups are in the area. But why are government and UN troops struggling to contain the violence? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. It's being called a heinous and cowardly attack. Italy's ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo, his police guard and driver were killed in an ambush on their convoy near Goma in the east. The Congolese government is blaming a Rwandan Hutu rebel group. Rights groups have warned of worsening violence in the area. The UN's refugee agency says more than 2,000 civilians were killed there last year, a record. That's despite the presence of government troops and United Nations peacekeepers. We'll bring in our guests in a moment. First, this update from Catherine Soy.
They were on a mission to Ruchuru in North Kivu province to visit a school feeding program, one of the many World Food Program projects Italy supports in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Their journey ended here in the Virunga National Park, several kilometers from the provincial capital Goma. The Italian ambassador, his bodyguard, and their driver were killed in a crossfire between park rangers and gunmen during an ambush on their convoy. Several other people were injured.
We are
activating all the relevant institutions to get to the truth as soon as possible about this cowardly attack that these 2 servants of the state of ours have suffered from and lost their lives.
But beyond the shock of what has happened, questions will be asked as to why the convoy did not have a UN, national police or army escort in such a dangerous area. The authorities in North Kivu say they were not aware the ambassador was in town. WFP says it had been cleared to use that road without escort.
The location of this attack is almost exactly the same place where 2 British tourists were kidnapped in May 2018. So it's kind of real evidence of this long-standing security lapse in the region. It was also very close to where 6 Virunga guards were killed last month.
This is the first major attack on a big UN organization like the WFP. But the park is steaming with rebels who target game rangers, civilians, and other NGO convoys to steal, kidnap, and demand ransom. The security problem, however, goes beyond this part of North Kivu. More than 70 rebel groups control much of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, extorting villagers and attacking their homes at will. In Beni, north of Goma, many thousands of people, including UN and government soldiers, have been killed and more displaced by the Allied Democratic Forces rebel group. Thousands of soldiers are on the ground battling different armed groups, but with limited success.
We're looking at a kind of long-standing funding issue for the Congolese army in that area, a lack of kind of security planning as well as strategy when it comes to trying to combat the armed groups who operate in that area. MONUSCO, obviously the UN peacekeeping force that has been operational there for a good number of years, has a lot to answer for with regards to insecurity in that area.
Many Congolese in these areas live in constant fear, hoping but not confident the forces that have struggled to defeat the rebels for years will one day succeed. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera.
UN peacekeepers have been in the Democratic Republic of Congo for many years. The most recent deployment has nearly 18,000 troops. Their mission is to protect civilians and support efforts to bring stability. Since the year 2000, more than 200 peacekeepers have been killed fighting armed groups. This includes a 2017 attack on their base in North Kivu province that killed 15 soldiers. It was described as the worst attack on UN forces in recent history. All right, let's bring in our guests in Beni, in Democratic Republic of Congo, Maureen Philippon, Country Director of the Norwegian Refugee Council. In Pretoria, David Zounmenou, Senior Research Consultant at the Institute for Security Studies. And in Accra, Kambale Musavuli with the Center for Research on the Congo-Kinshasa. Welcome to the program. David, let me start with you today. What's the status of the peacekeeping force now in DRC? Why have they not been able to get these armed groups under control, especially in North Kivu?
Well, the peacekeeping in the DRC is one of the biggest in the world. Initially, it was around 17,000 troops that have been deployed since 1999 to help Congo find the peace, but also to help Congo win over the actions of the operation of the activities of armed groups. The reality of the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC is that they have to face a multitude of local and foreign armed groups. Most of the local armed groups benefited from the support of the political actors, but also from some military officers, and continue to wreak havoc. The foreign armed groups also continue to really decimate the population, making it extremely difficult for the peacekeeping mission to operate. And if you put all that in a political context where political consensus is not the order of the day, where governance has been challenged, where elections have not been free and fair most of the time, and where we have a presidency which has been elected recently without the capacity and possibility to govern, to deliver public good to the citizen, then you will understand a few of the challenges that the peace mission is confronted with. And now that we're talking about the UN withdrawing from the DRC and defining exit strategy, there is a need to ask a serious question about the capacity of the DRC to defend its territory and to offer security to the citizen.
Maureen, earlier this month, the UN Refugee Agency sounded the alarm about what's been going on in eastern DRC. They said that last year more than 2,000 civilians were killed in 3 eastern provinces. In a statement, they also said atrocities committed by armed groups in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo have become part of a systematic pattern to disrupt lives, instill fear, and create havoc. Let me ask you, just how dire is the situation there right now?
Honestly, so I'm in Beni now, and I've been speaking this morning to displaced people, some of them just fleeing atrocities like less than a week ago. It's difficult to imagine. It's difficult to imagine the level of violence, the trauma, to see someone from your family being killed and then escaping. Some people arrived in Beni, went back to the field, sent the father back to the village to try to find something to eat, and the father never came back. And this is the kind of stories I've heard several times this morning. So people are trying to make do to recover, but it's extremely challenging. And this is true in different parts of Eastern Congo. It's not only in and around Beni, though it's probably the most active area these days, but it's also true in North Kivu, in South Kivu as well. So it's extremely challenging. Protection of civilians is a massive issue. Lives are totally disrupted. You have to flee, and schools don't work anymore. You're losing somebody from your household, and you just have to, find the energy to continue living. The support you get from humanitarian actors is limited, let's face it. So we all would like to do more, and Congolese definitely have to rely on their own to continue living as much as they can. Safety is a major issue.
Kambale, there's a lot of questions that have been raised about why exactly the Italian ambassador's convoy would be allowed to travel on that road where it was ambushed without a security escort. The WFP said that the attack happened on a road that had previously been cleared for travel without security escorts. From your point of view, was this a lapse in security planning?
It's hard to tell. I mean, it's 24 hours from the incident. The investigation is still ongoing. But what's clear is that the ambassador and his team followed the proper protocol from the UN. They contacted the UNDSS, went through the proper clearance to be able to travel. The concerning situation is to have seen, the pictures and the videos are circulating, where he doesn't have any protective gear, there is no bulletproof vehicle, and so on. To move from that place and be ambushed, questions have to be asked. What are the armed groups operating in the area? How is that impacting the region? Were there Congolese soldiers around the area? I mean, just today, we know even the precise location of where it happened, near 3 cell phone towers that's close to where the Congolese army is. So I'm more so waiting for the investigation to find out what happened. But from my perspective, I do believe from the information we have, the convoy followed the proper protocol to get the clearance they needed to be able to travel to Rutshuru.
David, Eastern Congo is home to many armed groups. I just want to take a step back for a moment to look at the bigger picture here. When we talk about these armed groups in that region, who are they? What are they fighting for?
Well, as I said initially, we have more than 150 armed groups active in the DRC. Some of them are local, I think emanating from the two major wars that the Congo faced in 1997, when Laurent Desire Kabila and his AFDL came storm into the DRC to chase away the long-standing military dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. And since then, we have witnessed the proliferation of armed groups. Now, among them, I think we can just give some kind of categorization for the understanding of the viewers. You take Beni, for example, you have the Allied Democratic Force, a Rwandan armed group that has been there for over 3 decades, causing most of the insecurity in that region. A radical group have a tendency to use terror to simply impose words or to send the message that they want to send. That is, impose jihads on the DRC. Initially, ADF aimed was to return back to Uganda to fight with Musavuli. But since that they have established in the DRC, they have been author of human rights violations, killing, assassination, all kinds of insecurity in that area. And the difficulty is for the DRC military forces to defeat them. Every time there was an operation, for example, in 2016, there had been an operation. And since October 2019, the National Army has started a new operation against the group. But what you see is if they leave the camps that they have in the area, they move to the east or down to Ituri province, where they mingle with the populations and now becoming created another area of insecurity. In the Ituri, you have a violence that's been created by a group called Codeco, local group which represents a particular ethnic group, and what they are fighting for is that they want the government to pay attention to the grievances in terms of access to land, in terms of access to power, in terms of responding to the basic need of the people. We come to the North Kivu. That's where we have the biggest problem. An armed group called NDC and Duma Defense to Congo Renové, led by an individual who has been put under sanction by the UN. Guidon, for example, has been creating a problem in that region for years. And in the latest news we know that that group was benefiting from the support from the army itself, but also from our neighboring countries, to the sense that it has become one of the major armed groups in the region. Lately, that armed group has been splitted to create two kinds of factions, fighting between each other, but also fighting against the populations. Alongside the local armed group in the North Kivu, we have the FDLR, the residual fighters who acted from the Rwanda following the genocide, who chose to live and prepare themselves in the DRC against Rwanda. But since then, they caused more problem to Congo.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt because I actually want to get back to asking you about the FDLR in a moment because we're starting to run out of time. Let me ask a question of Maureen right now. When we talk about abuses and atrocities being committed against civilian populations there, what specific examples are there?
So what you can read in reports and what people say, in some part of the East, there is a lot of knife and machetes being used, people attacking, sometimes like ammunition. And also when you use ammunition, you get noticed. So it seems that the patterns of fighting is more with knives, and then they start shooting so that people get distracted, and then they can flee. There's also a lot of rape. There are children being recruited in armed groups. You would also hear of a lot of kidnappings, people being forced, like the last UN Joint Office for Human Rights report reporting on human rights violation from July to December 2020 issued, like I think for that period of time, about 500 people have been disappearing. So they are not formally kidnapped, but we have no traces of them. And that's about the same number of kidnappings and a bit more of people being killed, civilians being killed. So it's plus your houses are burned down, your village is ransacked, your harvests are stolen. So it's the whole range of, just brutal violence and attacks on villages.
Kambale, how much is political instability in the country playing into the violence that we're seeing?
It's important for the viewers to really understand the situation in Congo, not in a oversimplistic narrative of ragtag rebels in the region and lawlessness without any political interest. I'm very clear about why we have a conflict in the Congo for the past decades now. Rwanda and Uganda, Congo's neighbors in the east, have invaded the Congo twice in 1996 and 98 and continue to support proxy rebel militias. It's been documented in numerous reports. The previous person who spoke just before me indicated the latest UN group of experts report that was published in December 23rd. In that report, it clearly stated that in the region where the Italian ambassador was killed, we have Rwandan soldiers. Rwandan soldiers are operating in the part of the Congo, in the Ruchuru area, in the Masisi and the Nyiragongo area, clandestinely, and we do not know what they do, and the Congolese government hasn't disclosed that. So we have the death of a diplomat, of Congolese, also the driver from the World Food Program and others. When we leave the discussion open-ended with these rebels just running around without any political interest, we'll never address the fundamental issue. Until the culture of impunity is addressed in the DRC, we will continue to see these killings. And that can be stopped simply by following what the UN Human Rights Office did. 10 years ago, they published a report, the Mapping Exercise Report. In this report, it documented 617 incidents of mass human rights violation in the DRC. It says that what's happening in the Congo is war crimes, crimes against humanity, and possible genocide if proven in the competent court, and called for the creation of an international tribunal for DRC. We had 2 UN experts killed in 2017, Zaida Catalan and Michael Shaw, where the Foreign Policy magazine says there was a cover from the United Nations to address the cover-up of the Congolese government. Are we going to do the same now that we have more deaths, and the deaths are continuing? Over 6 million Congolese people are dead. Congolese are saying we need an international tribunal for Congo so that the crimes committed in Congo, people can be held accountable.
David, where do things stand right now when it comes to the Congolese security forces, their capacities, and also, do you believe that the government there is going to start rethinking its strategy?
Look, I think the challenges are very clear, and the gap in terms of capacity has been on the table for many years. What was missing is the political will to act in terms of improving the capacity of the security forces in the DRC. We've been talking about the reform of the security sector in the DRC for over 10 years. There have been some good actions that have been put in place, but the whole exercise has been politicized and turned more against the citizens, against the activists, against political opponents than creating the capacity, creating the possibility of environment where women can feel safe, where children can feel safe, where people can move freely from one part of the country to the other. So there is a need now to rethink the security sector reform, capacitating the FRDC, which is the National Army, and the police forces, but also linked to it the justice system. I think the previous speaker was talking about international treatment for the DRC. The court has been on for ages now. Is the international community prepared to step into that direction? Are the government authorities in the DRC prepared to step into that direction? That will send a very strong signal to those who continue to use violence to voice whatever concern they have or to achieve whatever ambition that they have. In fact, political violence has become the means through which political actors or various actors in the DRC can have access to power or establish their control over the natural resources in that country. So the reform of the security sector remains very important in terms of polishing the capacity of the state to ensure security to the citizen and for DRC to project sovereignty beyond Kinshasa.
Maureen, with the situation as dangerous as it is there, how are humanitarian organizations and actors able to carry out their work? How difficult is it?
It is difficult. Since September last year, 20 NGOs workers have been kidnapped in the east. They've been abducted and released, but it's a big figure. It's a big figure. NRC, we've been suffering 2 ambushes over last year with no casualties. And it's a mix of armed groups and criminal activities, either totally loose or somewhat related to armed groups. So it's extremely difficult. Some areas are out of reach because of security. If we can't guarantee the security of our team, obviously that's my #1 priority. And my #2 priority is to assist as many Congolese people as I can. But I don't want to jeopardize the safety of my colleagues. So it is extremely difficult. We are building networks, acceptance. We are working on our passive security with community acceptance. But this is always risky, I must say.
Kambale, there are observers who say that peacekeeping operations there are simply failing. What is your response to that?
I mean, the peacekeeping forces, they have a strong mandate now to address some of the issues. I think one of the previous speakers did say that there is a lack of political will on the local, regional, and international level. Speaking specifically about the United Nations, I will look into the permanent members of the Security Council. If they are not in one accord around bringing peace and stability in the DRC, it makes it hard for the 22,000 contingent of the United Nations peacekeeping force, the largest in the world, to address the situation. But we have a serious problem, a serious crisis that can be addressed. Yesterday, February 22nd, Mustafa Milambo, Luca Attanasio, and Vittorio Lacovacci died. Could that be prevented? We shouldn't have been where we are today discussing deaths of people who are working in humanitarian situation. Why were they there? I mean, Luca was in a mission to go to the Kasai and the Kivus around the World Food Program projects. World Food Program said last year that 22 million Congolese are on the brink of starvation. That's 1 out of 4 Congolese. Going to look at this project, he lost his lives. So on one hand, you see a humanitarian solution provided to the DRC, where he didn't address the political problem, and Luca lost his life through the process. Mustafa and Vittorio also lost their lives. So I strongly believe Congo does not need any charity or humanitarian aid. What Congo needs is justice. The question of justice can be addressed with the creation of the tribunal that will send a strong signal for an end to impunity, the cultural impunity that's rampant in the DRC.
All right, we have run out of time, so we're going to have to leave the conversation there. Thank you so much to all of our guests, Maureen, Philippon, David, Zounmenou, and Kambale Musavuli. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.